Oh boy, guys. I have a treat for you. Been waiting to do this video for a long time. This is a comparison video of Husqvarna 350 cylinder heads. Now, I'm going to start off by saying that I do have a 42 millimeter cylinder head here, which is open port, and you can look inside there and see what's up. But I believe this cylinder to be irrelevant because if you're rebuilding one of these saws, nobody in their right mind would use a 42 cylinder head. This is the tall version, so if you notice, one's low and one's high. This one has the integral bearing cap. There's a 44 millimeter version of this as well, I think, but we're going to ignore that for now. I don't know that for sure, but I think so. I think there's a 44 millimeter version of that. There's also this 44, which is also open port. Again, a cylinder head that we're going to ignore because I don't think this is relevant. If you're rebuilding your Husqvarna 350, whether you're going to do it OEM or whether you're going to do it aftermarket, these are not the cylinder heads that you're going to be using. They're not. They actually have an aftermarket version of this, which I think is probably somewhere in the $35 or $40 range for the whole kit. I've used it. It does actually work. But by and large, you're just not going to be doing that unless you're really cheap out. So, let's put these aside for the moment. And let's look at the things we are going to be using. So first up, everybody loves seeing this. Now, I've basically been told that I'm completely crazy for using anything but this. Now, this is how it came to me. I think somebody had this unit, but clearly this is never used. Okay, so this is a OEM 346 XP model, 44.3 millimeter cylinder head. So they had to mess us up and go with a 44.3 millimeter head. So I've got this and I've got a bunch of others. So let's go a little bit closer into the comparison between all of them. So let's lay them all out here. That's one. And by the way, we have a decompression valve plug in the box and a needle bearing and OEM circlets. Let's look what we have next. Here is, as far as I'm concerned, the direct competitor to OEM. Rings here. This is a Highway. Brand new. Never opened. Let's open it. The foam's a nice touch. Now, I don't know how this is packed because I'm going to assume that it didn't come like that originally. This came to me third party. It just looks like it's never been used, so I'm going to accept it for a comparison. So here's that. Now, the difference in this, I'm going to put the cylinder the piston aside for the moment, but immediately I notice a difference in the plating. Immediately there's a difference in the plating. So, next, let's bring out the next one. This is a 44.3. This is a 45 millimeter kit. I've never tried the OEM. I do have this one on my personal saw. And this is what everybody ran last year at the get-together, and everybody loved it. This is a Husqvarna kit. So this is a 44.3 kit. This is from a guy on eBay that calls himself Husqvarna, and I have used this kit before, and I do like it. Seems to run just fine. I happen to sell the saw. I don't own it any longer, but I do indeed like this kit. We're going to again delve into more direct comparisons in a second. So we've got the OEM, we've got the Highway, which I believe is the direct competitor, although a slightly bigger bore, and then this is effectively a Chinese clone, the Husqvarna kit. And then we have the rookie. The rookie, the oddball, whatever you want to call it. This comes from a company in the UK. It comes with a base gasket and exhaust gasket too. That's nice. You know what? While I'm doing this, might as well label these. This is OEM. This one is the Husqvarna kit, so I'm going to put a K on there. This one is Highway, so I'm going to put an H. And then this one comes from the UK. And I believe this is a 45 millimeter kit as well. Ring, circlips, wrist pin. Piston. Let's label this. I'm going to label it UK. Put the pistons to the side. We've got all these, and I'm going to throw one more thing in the mix here. Just for comparison's sake, we do it because we do need to talk about it. Happen to have a used OEM 45 millimeter pseudo open port, sort of closed port, 350. So this has seen better days. But actually, I believe this is probably usable. I'll bet that's a usable cylinder. Clean that up, it'll be fine. Okay. So, all of these others are quad port cylinders. They are cylinders that have the closed ports and exhaust via 4 ports as the transfers. Now, so let's talk about the oddball first. So this is an OEM cylinder head, and it's not a bad head. The biggest benefit to using this head here, in my opinion, is that you do not need tools. You do not need a right angle tool to port this. So if you wanted to go in, you want to mess with the timing numbers, you just take the transfer covers off, and you can go in there with your Dremel tool and work it however you want it. That's really the ultimate advantage of this cylinder head. Now, you can probably pick this cylinder head up used for pretty similar to what you can get these for. Let's talk about price for a second here. As it turns out, they're all kind of similar. They're pretty close in price, which is one of the biggest reasons for this comparison. The OEM kit has come down in price. Now, I believe I picked this up on eBay for about $100. You can get them from Spike 60 up at Ashokan Turf and Timber, and he'll sell these to you for $105 plus shipping, or including shipping, I forget. About $105 is where you're at for the OEM cylinder, and if you're going to pay $280 for one of these, then I think the argument becomes much more relevant to get rid of it and not talk about it and to use one of these others. But if it's only going to be just over $100, then you really got to put this in the mix and consider it that this is probably going to be your number one choice. But let's have a closer look at everything and give everything a fair shake. So, other prices. The one from the UK was 70 something plus shipping. I think the Kafar kit was probably like 90 including shipping. And if everybody needs exact numbers, I can get exact numbers, or you can go get them on eBay yourself. Just go on eBay and pick them up. The Highway kit is 109 from HL Supply. For the kind of prices you're talking about here for these kits, I think we might as well take this OEM and probably put it to the side. The only way you'd use it is if you wanted to tinker around with something and port it. If you got it for a really good price, then you want to remove the transfer covers, but you don't have a right angle drill to get in there. If you want to get into your first foray into porting, this is probably going to be the ticket for you. It works fine. I have a personal saw with one of these on it, and it runs great. So it's not quite as powerful as the Highway, but still very nice, and I would not hesitate to run it. So let's put this aside. The first thing that I notice visually, let's put these two aside. The plating on these two seems to be quite similar. So let's look at the Highway versus the OEM. And when I look at these in the light, the plating on the Highway is gorgeous. It is utterly beautiful. And I notice that I think the plating extends pretty high up in the combustion chamber. So I'm gonna, let's zoom in a little bit more here. So look in there. Is that pretty or what? The plate, it just shines. I mean, it shines. That's beautiful. Now, here's the OEM, and it's pretty. Very nice. Very nice, but doesn't shine like that. Let's see if I can get... Can you see that there's a lip right there at the top, right at the combustion chamber at the edge? It doesn't look like the plating extends all throughout the top of the combustion chamber. I like the plating on this one. This gets top marks for plating. It's pretty. I don't know what the longevity of it's going to be, but it's very, very pretty. Now, one thing I noticed about the OEM is that the shape of the ports and the size of the bevels is much more consistent. It's smooth, it's consistent, there are very few casting defects. Very few casting defects. The intake, look at the exhaust, it's nice and even. Good sized bevel on all the ports. Nice and even. The highway, thick, heavy bevel. Heavy, heavy bevel. But not as even. Not as even on the ports. The size and the shape and all that stuff. So you can see that. The other thing I notice is the plating here. I mean, this appears to be awful thick, so if you're trying to get air this way, this lip is going to be in the way. Not quite so much here. There appears to be a bit of a bump here. But it's not quite as much here. So if you're, and see, you can see a bubble here. Little bleb. A bleb here. Yeah, little bleb here. So even the OEM's casting isn't perfect. It's pretty nice though. That's pretty nice casting. What else can I say about these two? These ports look bigger. And that may actually be, I mean, they look thicker this way. That may actually be because this is a slightly larger bore. Slightly. This is 45 millimeter, this is 44.3. Impulse holes are different shapes. This one is round, that one's oblong, and the others are all oblong too. They all copied this. This one didn't. Don't think it's necessarily relevant. The more important thing here is to not plug that when you actually put the cylinder head down with your gasket and everything. Don't plug that hole, otherwise you get a problem. Much more even casting here. Kind of lumpy here. It's as if they used heavier grains of sand and this was finer sand cast. Finer grains. The exhaust. The OEM is smoother. But I think the plating extends further on the highway. So let's put the highway aside for the moment. So the UK kit, I thought this was a 45mm kit. I was wrong, this is 44.3. Measurement on the piston, 44.16. The Kafar kit, 44.07 on the Kafar kit. 44.14 and the OEM kit. So I was about to say that these two look like they're the same, but I'd be wrong. The UK kit looks like it's a better clone of the OEM just because it copied the lower transfer ports here. These are even. These have a little bit of depth here. This looks like it's coated with something, like it was painted. Galvanized, or I don't know. Anodized. Maybe? I don't know. What's that bump doing there? Now, this bump... Ha! Now I see what that bump is doing there. This little bump in here is for the flywheel, for clearance. No clearance on this one. Put the OEM aside for a minute. Look at these two. Okay, so the casting of the transfer ports on both of these is not so good. So, assuming you're going to port these anyway, which I am, this is relatively irrelevant. But right in here you can see how uneven that is. Pretty uneven. Zoom back in. Again, the UK kit, you can see how uneven it is in there. Not a very good bevel. The exhaust basically is not beveled at all. Odd sizes of the transfer ports. And the intake is not really beveled either. I probably would not run this cylinder as is, though. I'm pretty sure running this as is would be a bad idea, just because there's not really any bevel on those transfers or on the exhaust. So, let's look at the Kafar kit. And you can see that's kind of rough in there too. The plating in the Kafar kit extends a little bit into the exhaust, but not that far. I like the transfers. I like the lower transfers on these kits. They're nice and open. Not a lot of casting issues. Wouldn't need to do very much to these to open these up. Even a little bit more. You just don't need to do that much to that. So I do actually like these, the lowers on both of these. Would I run this as is? Again, probably not. I'd want to go in there and clean that up. This one, the Kafar kit, does appear to have at least a little bit of a wider squish band. Slightly. Which means you're going to have a slightly smaller combustion chamber, which in turn means higher compression. And that squish band is so pretty on the highway, I wouldn't touch it. I would make sure to leave that thing alone. Now getting timing numbers on this is going to be particularly tricky, because on the highway kit, because the bevels are so heavy. Get it. I don't know. Which one do you think is going to run better? I've already got this in a saw, so we know what this is. I'm going to put these three in saws, and we're going to run them at the Connecticut get-together, I hope. And I'm going to post this video up as soon as possible, and that way, if anybody has any questions, they can, or wants me to take a measurement on something, they'll feel free to ask before I actually get these all up in a saw. So, last thing to look at really quickly is the pistons. So we've got coarse, cast, medium, coarse, medium, fine, and then this looks like ultra fine. So this piston, the machine marks look alright, got a label on it. These look kind of wide, like somebody cut this quickly. Golf. This goes to the Kafar kit, by the way. This one, which is kind of a medium, says, I think, FD. This is the UK kit. Finer machine marks. Not as fine as the highway. So this goes to the UK kit. The highway, I mean, nearly a mirror polish on the top, and pretty fine machine marks here. So when they took the lathe and made the cut, they did it very, very slowly. This actually has coarser machine marks. The OEM has coarser machine marks on it, interestingly. But when the OEM was cast, they used a much finer grain of sand, I think. Let's see. I've got this powdery stuff, residue on here. Maybe not. Maybe the highway was cast with better sand. Interesting. I just look for the waffling pattern here, and kind of marbled look, I don't know. Anyway, there you have it. The highway looks like a fine piston. Don't have a problem with that. The OEM, I'm sure, is a fine piston too. So there's that comparison. I hope you you like this little comparison video of these. For the money, I'd say the OEM is great. Again, I don't know if it's second place, but the highway I like a lot. I think I can make these two probably just as adequate of runners as that. It may take some extra work, but you can probably make these as good of a runner as the OEM. That's my assertion. That's the null hypothesis. And we're going to test that, hopefully coming up at the get-together with some saws. So, thank you for watching this. Hope you like this little video. Don't forget to subscribe.